If it's conservative.
If you're looking for something liberal
and realistic, this is the place to be.
Welcome to our podcast. Today we're going to be talking about sexual immorality. My name is Natasha Kaliki, and here with me is Greg and Advocate Nyari Maposa. Do you mind telling us a brief about yourself?
No problem. So yes, as Natasha said, I'm Advocate Nyari. I am a legal practitioner by profession. I am a partner with Soya and Kushi Legal Practitioners. I am also an international evangelist. I've also served as an ex-com member, the executive committee member of the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division. I am director of several companies, both quasi-government and private companies. I am the executive director of Breeze Music, and I am extremely passionate about youth and matters to do with young people.
Okay, yeah. That's nice. Mm-hmm. Greg?
Well, there's not really much about me. I'm a deacon at the church.
Yay.
And today I'll be part of the people that you'll be talking to about the subject at hand. But yeah, I'm also a vet by profession. So hopefully you're going to have an interesting discussion today.
Okay, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about sexual immorality. May you please tell us the definition of sexual immorality? What is sexual immorality?
Okay. Yeah. Sexual immorality, I'm not going to give the wide term, say, in terms of the law, or in terms of the world. Mm-hmm. So I'll restrict it to in terms of, Christianity. Mm-hmm. We know that people who are allowed to enjoy what we call conjugal rights, which means people who can sleep together or have sexual relations together, those are people who are married, right? And it's one wife, one husband. Mm-hmm. So anything outside of that would be sexual immorality. Mm-hmm. That includes two people who are not married who are sleeping together. Mm-hmm. It includes one married person who is having extramarital affairs, or a single person having sexual relations with a married person, or it can be two married people having sexual relations with other people who are not their spouses. That extends to, it can then extend to, I suppose, say homosexuality, where two men or two women are having such relations. Mm-hmm. It can also, and in terms of the Bible, actually, interestingly, it includes apostasy, people worshipping idols. Mm-hmm. That was also considered, I think, what we can call fornication. Okay, it includes prostitution. Mm-hmm. So it is really wide. So anything that is outside of two people who are married, having sexual relations, all that is sexual immorality.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So, Greg?
Yeah, just to add on, just from the term itself, sexual immorality, there are things that are sexual that can be done by two partners of opposite genders, right? Male and female, that can be legally that are legally right, and also that are right even before God's word. But there are also other things that can be done by two partners who have been officially married in the courts of law. That in the present day world, it's something that's approved. But in terms of God's word, it's something that's immoral.
Right.
So these are some of the things that we need now to talk much about today.
Okay, so today I want to focus more on the youths. Why they are the ones who are dating older men, or maybe we have the guys dating older women for various reasons. So we want to deal more on the youth. We want to focus more on the youth.
Right.
So I want you guys to tell me the causes for sexual immorality. When we look at the guys, the boys or the girls, maybe Greg, you tell us for guys, and then Nyari for the ladies side, yeah, the views.
Okay, honor ladies, you may go first.
I was looking forward to what Greg was saying because earlier he was talking about the drug lord behind. I think we're talking about drugs,
yes,
So
yes,
now
yes.
that there is this drug lord behind. Look, the devil is in the world. You know what I mean? And it's he. I always say that the devil tries to make sure that he derails you from the path to heaven. Number one, either by tempting you to sin. Okay, and so that will include, somebody wanting to wear Gucci. To wear like these like Chanel, etc. So if somebody has not accepted themselves and they feel that the clothes they're gonna wear, or the places they're gonna hang out at, or the friends that they have, that's gonna make them, be an important person. They will do anything, in order to afford those things. Yeah. So the devil will tempt you to sin. He'll give you even what I call custom-made temptation. Which suits, if you're African, it suits an African environment. It suits, if you're European, in that kind of thing, if you're at this age group. If he doesn't do that, well, he'll cause you to neglect duty. A lot of people find themselves in sexually immoral places because they're not at church. They just didn't go to church in the afternoon. They didn't go back, and then they find themselves tempted in a certain way. And then sometimes, I suppose if we can look at it that way, to say there are different ways in which people want to validate themselves. And if you cannot afford the validation you would want, whether it's that you can go, let's say for worldly people, you can go to this kind of nightclub, because I think my nightclubs, they are like different, So she wants to be able to go to this kind of nightclub. She wants to hang out with the groupies for this other star, but you can't afford it, So they will find means and ways.
So you're saying, is it because of poverty which leads them to be involved in sexual immorality?
I wouldn't say poverty. Yes, poverty, Natasha, true, poverty. But how many people are poor and are not necessarily engaging in sexual immorality? So what I would want is to, press down on the actual issue to say, if a person is say they're not defined, okay, I always talk about definition. This is so important, because if you're not defined, then somebody is ready to define you, okay? And I can be poor, but my poverty doesn't have to make me have a low self-esteem. So if I have a low self-esteem and I haven't dealt with my low self-esteem, it's gonna be downhill from there, right? So yes, poverty for some people, I suppose perhaps if we're talking of transactional relationships where I know that there's an example of a lady who's very public about it. She's a lawyer now, but she, there was a rich guy who was having a relationship, a sexual relationship with her mom, right?
Wow.
And he was helping pay for rent wherever they were, right? And then she got to a place where she had to go to university, and she couldn't afford university, but now. And so this guy then privately spoke to her to say, look, I can help you with this, but you're gonna have to, she didn't want to, because she knew this guy was also having a relationship with her mom, and so he was having a relationship with both of them, and the mom didn't know, and he paid her way through university. So it was transactional. She wasn't in love with this guy. So that's where poverty maybe can come in. But I believe that everyone, whether you're poor or rich, everyone has a choice. And usually getting into these relationships with older people has a lot more to do with choosing the easier way out. Because someone can just think, I'm going to start a tuck shop. Do you know what I mean? Or I'm going to take a temporary job and be, like the official church clerk for a church, or I can come here and record and do. There's always a choice, and is somebody whether poor or not, makes the choice the easy way, then you end up with that kind. Because it's always a choice that's there. You can also be a prostitute, but not everyone is a prostitute. Yeah.
Just to interject on that, when it comes to sin, sin doesn't respect whether you are poor, whether you're rich, or whether you're still in that phase where you're trying to figure out life.
True.
Sin, the devil, isn't a respect of persons. When it comes to this subject that you're talking about. And the other thing that we get to realize also just by looking at what's happening around us, the world now has so many genders that are available. And this now draws us back to the definition even of the subject that we're discussing today. We're saying sexual immorality.
Yeah.
One, we have to establish what is immoral. Two, we have to establish which sexes are we discussing about, because the world has given us a standard to say that there is something that you can identify as a bi, you can identify as a transgender, you can identify as an elephant. There are people having there's what we call bestiality, where an individual is having maybe sex with an animal. So the whole aspect of how we used to know what our grandparents used to call sexual immorality back then, and what we are now doing, we are inventing all sorts of things that are going contrary to God's law. So it's of essence that we need to have a foundation that can now that will help us to be anchored as Christians, right? To be anchored, to say, okay, as Christians, where can we say this is we have now surpassed the limit? Because without a foundation, without a point of reference, it's very difficult to say what goes and what doesn't.
Yeah, that is true. And maybe I can add on to that. Like the definition of morality, you have to go back to the Bible definition of morality. Because the minute we start to think of, what is the, what are my human rights? If I can say it, like say from a legal point of view, I have realized that human rights have become so different to what is right. So people have been given human rights, but the chasm between what is right and human rights completely, it's just widening and widening and widening. I remember growing up. I mean, I grew up in the church, but this is not to desecrate the church or anything, but I don't remember anyone ever actually showing me the example of Christianity. To say, okay, so this is done, this is not done. I knew what people spoke about at church, but I never had an example either at home or around, right? So there was a time when I had to go, overseas. I think our university was closed, and I just said, I'm going to the US. I'm going to look for a job. You understand? My visa came out and it said, not for work or study. But what was I going there to do? To work. You get what I mean? And so when the first time it came to my mind was when my hosts, who are Adventists and very Christian, they were driving me from the airport and were going home. They're like, so what are you going to spend your time doing here, Nari? And I said, well, I'm going to be working. I'm going to work my back off. And they said, but what does your visa say? I was like, who cares about the visa and what it says? You understand the level of morality. And everyone here was encouraging me to say, go and work.
Because everyone is trying to make an extra buck.
Because then you justify it by saying we are having problems in Zimbabwe, and so I have a right to do that. But then they came up with the standard, and I felt that I fell short of that, because and everybody else behind me was supporting me. They were like, yeah, go. But when they said, what does your visa say? And they asked me, so how are you going to pay your taxes? I was like, taxes? Who pays taxes? You understand? So in the very same way with sexual immorality, because nobody else, if there's no one who's a shining example that it can actually be done, and you can actually live a life that is straight, a life that is pure before God, then we all fall down to this lower level of morality or of Christianity, and we are in shock when somebody actually stands up and says, but why are you sleeping with your boyfriend? And you're like, sure, everybody's doing it.
Okay, so for boys, there's this need that they have to seek for they now have to be involved in sexual immorality with older women because they say they don't feel the pressure to marry. There's no pressure to marry because if you're dating a maybe someone who is your age, right? There will be pressure whereby she'll be saying,
you
when
have
are
to
you
take
going to
her
marry
out.
me? You have to take her out, you have to buy her gifts,
But taking out up, no coming out.
Yes, but if you are to date these women who are already rich, you don't even have to buy them Valentine's gifts, no airtime, no fuel, so no expenses for. Is it true? Great.
Well, okay. This is interesting considering that I'll be representing the guys. One thing that I've noticed is it's not always about us coming from a point of lack, because some of us actually have the resources, actually have the means, be it a vehicle to go and pick out the ladies of the night, which is something that's easy because you're gonna meet her, have a one night stand, and you move on and you forget about it, right? Because sometimes it might be someone at the club. You meet up at the club, you have a good time with the person, you bring them home. Maybe the young guys at our age, right? The young guys at our age. Most of us we're now staying alone. You bring her home, no one questions what is she doing, where is she from, and the whole idea that no one is looking is something that sort of pacifies the idea of us being involved in sin. The whole aspect that we forget that there is an omnipresent God who knows, who sees, and who's observing. His angels are there. They are witnessing, and they are writing with terrible exactness what's going on. So the challenge that's there now, why we are settling for older women with better resources and all that, you're right. It's because we don't want the pressure. You young guys, you young ladies are telling us, Greg, Valentine's, what's up for Valentine's? I don't have money
And
for...
when are you going to marry me?
Yeah, that too.
It's just sex you want.
It's not only about sex. Sometimes it's just an escape.
Okay.
That's why when people have a one night stand, they never do a follow-up. That's why it's called one night stand. In the morning, early in the morning, 4, 5, you're leaving. I don't want to see you by 6. Most of the time, it's the guy who's still in bed. So just looking at it, it's a transaction where the moment you're done doing the transaction, just as when you go at a bank, you're doing you want to withdraw your money. The moment the ATM hands you you get your money from the ATM, you get your slip. What are you still waiting there for? Because you have had your satisfaction, and so you move on to the next thing.
So it's to do with lust.
Exactly.
Essentially, yes. Natasha, what I've heard guys say is that obviously a woman who's maybe 36 or 43, whatever the age is, they have more experience. This is, let's just be, and most guys, not most, maybe they may not be too general, but a lot of guys have their first sexual experiences with older women. Why? Because they will say, we want somebody who has experience. I want him to teach me. I want her to teach me how to do this. Oh yeah, so that when I go for the young ones, manch, I'm the don. Okay, I'm cool. So a lot of guys go there. Number one, because they're looking for experience. Number two, those women don't judge you. Okay, so if you are stiff and you're not really experienced, she's patient with you. But if it's a younger girl, they'll be like, oh yeah, not deal with it. She'll be telling her friend. You understand? And these are genuine fears that young guys have, because your sexuality has a lot to do with your self-esteem. Okay, so if you're gonna expose yourself with Inini, I'm as green as the grass, Guys would rather go to girls when they are better, when they are more experienced. So number one is that. Number two is just pure lust, and really older ladies, they've got the money card to look good. You know what I mean? If it's Brazilian hair, if it is Misho, and I'm more confident perhaps about my physiology. So you see, if it's to do with wearing things that are seductive, I carry them better because I'm more comfortable with me because of the age. But the younger girls, she's still trying to discover herself. She's still trying to,
maintain themselves.
yes. So a lot of guys might not be sexually attracted to these girls, and they'd rather go for the older women. This is all excluding the money part.
Can we talk about peer pressure? Because it's a thing.
Oh yeah.
I've had a discussion with some of my guys. We're talking about how they are guys who sometimes actually have competition about body counts.
Oh, yo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually happening.
Yeah.
Where someone will say, you know nothing about
About
these
women.
things about women, because I've done it at my place, in the car, lodges, and all these other
Ayo.
places. So
Ayo.
people sort of like breaking rights. You need street cred.
Yeah,
We call it
right.
street cred, right? Like when you're out there, you are having discussions with your guys. You don't want to feel like the guy who doesn't know about life.
Hey.
When they bring up a certain subject, okay, even sometimes it's not even about, this is something also we need to talk about. It's not always about the other partner being a lady. Sometimes it's about just you as a guy, things like masturbation.
Wow.
That's an immorality that is really
Eish.
being talked
And
about
also
at church.
pornographic, watching pornographic films. It also leads to sexual immorality.
Ish. In fact, itself, not that it leads to sexual immorality. Itself, it's sexual immorality.
Yeah.
Understand something. Your brain is the biggest sex organ. Your body will not react if your mind is not stimulated. Okay, so a person can have the same satisfaction by watching a pornographic movie as they would have by actually sleeping with a girl or a guy. And so in itself, when you are watching two people doing what they're doing, you are turned on. It's like a thing. Why? You are not there, nobody's touching you. But it's the what? It's the brain. Okay, so when you're stimulated that way, you are actually, in reality, because we're dealing with the subconscious mind, in reality, you are the third person there, or the fourth or the fifth, whatever, depending on what's happening. So watching porn in itself is actually the sexual immorality. And you can also see that you're talking about masturbation. We just need to stress on that. And it's tough, but it's a reality. And I remember just referring to, if I can just say, 1 Thessalonians. Okay, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It talks about every person who has a body. God's saying you need to learn to possess your vessel. So God created you. You understand what I mean? And He knows that you have the capacity to control yourself. So when you're talking of masturbation, okay, it's you. You're not even there with anybody else. It's you and yourself, you yourself and you, right? And God says you need to control, because you do that by yourself. Somebody just leaves the office or leaves the classroom. They go to the bathroom, they do what they do, then they come back, So all those extra, or maybe non-physical types of sexual immorality, we have to name them by their name.
Okay, so any last words you want to say, Greg?
Okay, so I'll just try to sum up some of the things. We're talking about FOMO, fear of missing out, right? We're talking about peer pressure.
Yeah.
We are talking about trying to experience new things. We are talking about me just feeling lonely, and to have that validation to just escape. As a way of escape, I might end up engaging things like masturbation and watching pornography, or watching media that is related to sexual, that's immoral. So these are some of the causes that we young men, and also young ladies also, because masturbation is not only limited to guys, even ladies, even those that are in married setups are also suffering from some of those things.
Yeah. And if I can add on to that, I know we didn't mention this, but just drug addiction, drug use. I know a young girl right now, she's 15, she's just recently pregnant because she started, getting into drugs. And when she would be high, she would not be aware of what is going on. And she was always getting gang raped. So like right now you talk to the mom, she doesn't know who the father is for this child. So when you are inebriated or intoxicated, and not just drugs, beer, just actually alcohol. You are not in your right senses, right? And then I think I just need to talk about, just not having a low self-esteem. Okay, so if I say, okay, so let's just say the head boy is an amazing guy, and then he comes to me and he says hi. You know what I mean? Somebody, maybe it's a youth elder in the church. You know what I mean? What, a deacon. You know what I mean? And this is like, every girl is like, oh, if I could just have a chance with that guy. You've got girls who say that. And then he comes to you. It's like an act of gratitude. Whatever he asks for is fine. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I can also maybe tell the other girls to say, message, so, I'm going to see him. So low self-esteem plays a huge part where you feel that you become a better person, or people see you as, more, it validates you when you actually sleep with this particular guy, or whatever. And that's why a lot of girls also just keep on being in those relationships. And then maybe finally, just to say that if you don't have a relationship with God, that's where everything, like you were saying, kuna Satan, the devil is there. Joseph left Canaan and went to Egypt. And he was not worried about disappointing his parents. His response was not about his parents. His response was not about his high school headmaster to say, what will they say? It had nothing to do with his master, his employer. Nothing. He said, how do I do this thing and sin against God? So sometimes we can be sexually impure. We can watch these things because we don't imagine Jesus sitting next to you. We don't see the angels, who are surrounding you, recording with terrible.
Jesus in the storm.
You can smile in the vessel. You can smile at the storm. Exactly. We don't see God. So if you're not living in the presence of God, which is where it should start, it's easy to ignore Him. It's easy to do your things thinking it's you and yourself in the bathroom. But when you think of it to say God is there, and you answer the same way that Joseph did, that said, how can I do this thing and sin against God, who was not even there? Nobody could see him. They'd cleared out the house. So if you don't have that presence of God around you, that is the first and the biggest cause of sexual immorality.
Okay, so that was all for now. We'll be talking about some of these issues, the solutions, and the verses which can add to what we were talking about in the next segment. Thank you.
If is conservative.
If you're looking for something liberal
and realistic, this is the place to be.